Thank you before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting. I'm in Geelong, so I'm on Wadawurrung land, and I'd like to show my respect to their elders past, present and future. So today we'll be talking about protecting the Victorian Volcanic Plains. And I thought maybe it might be best to start with just introducing what the Victorian Volcanic Plains are. It's a really diverse and fascinating bioregion in Victoria. A bioregion is a landscape-scaled approach to classifying the environment using a range of attributes such as climate, geomorphology, geology, soils and vegetation. And within Victoria, there are 28 bioregions identified. So the image that I'm sharing is identifies the Victorian Volcanic Plains bioregion in the darker shadowing. The Victorian Volcanic Plains encompasses an area of approximately 22,000 square kilometres, spreading west from Melbourne to Portland near the South Australian border. It's largely defined by its geological features, and this is a fantastic image that Australian Geographic shared in one of their magazines about 3 years ago now. It has over 437 volcanoes, ranging in age from the oldest being about 7.5 million years to the youngest only being about 7,000 years old. So prior to European settlement, the VVP of a diverse native grassland and grassy woodlands, and they were generally dominated by native grasses with many species of wildflowers growing between the grassland tussocks. It's possible to find more than 25 different plant species within a single square metre of grassland. And early pioneers like John Bateman, back in 1835, described the grassy plains to the north and west of Melbourne as the most beautiful sheep pasture that he ever saw in his life. And these grasslands offered extremely fertile land, which made them attractive to grazing and agriculture. However, overgrazing by sheep and cattle and the addition of fertilisers to improve the pastures, the extent of fire, land clearing, removal of many native ground digging small mammals has led to the degradation of the native grasslands. So the natural temperate grasslands and grassy eucalypt woodlands of the VVP are amongst the most threatened ecological communities in the world, and both ecological communities that were formerly extensive on the VVP now comprise mostly small, highly fragmented remnant patches. They estimate there's less than 5% of the original extent of both of these communities, although patches that are in good condition are less than 1%. And therefore they're protected by Commonwealth legislation, and that's the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. Here's an image of a few of our beautiful fauna species. The Victorian Volcanic Plains is a national biodiversity hotspot, one of only 15 within Australia. And this hotspot includes 65 species listed as nationally threatened and 137 threatened in Victoria. You might even notice that a few of these species are classed as extinct in the wild, particularly our eastern barred bandicoots and our earlist grassland dragon. And here are a few of the threatened plant species on the Victorian Volcanic Plains. The VVP is also characterised by 9 lakes, which are recognised as international important features under the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, and 27 lakes listed as in the Directory of Important Wetlands in Victoria. Also really, I'd like to acknowledge that the VVP is also really important and significant areas for the Aboriginal people. So for our Protecting the Victorian Volcanic Plains that we're currently running, we're focusing on the critically endangered grassy eucalypt woodlands of the Victorian Volcanic Plains. And these woodlands are typically an open woodland with beautiful old gum trees over native grasses, wildflowers and herbs. The tree canopy is dominated by riverwood gums. However, you might also find some swamp gums and manor gums in wetter areas, or if you move to the dry areas, you can also find yellow box and grey box. The native ground layer is dominated by kangaroo grass, speargrass, wallaby grass, polytussocks, and also weeping grass. And there's a range of colourful wildflowers amongst the grass tussocks in spring. So now is the time to definitely get out there and start exploring your grassy eucalypt woodlands. So the Protecting the Victorian Volcanic Plains program is funded under the Australian Government's National Landcare Program, and the Corangamite CMA has received $2.8 million to deliver the program. It will run from 2020 through to 2023. As Alice previously mentioned, the CMA has been delivering biodiversity programs like the Plains Tender program on the VVP since 2005. The current program was designed using an infer process, and this infer process is a participatory and collaborative process involving technical and scientific specialists, NRM managers and people with local knowledge and experience. The infer process was also informed by an independent evaluation of our past VVP Plains Tender programs within the Corangamite Management Unit. And the infer process and early stakeholder engagement fed directly into the program logic and the Mary Plan. So our program has a project target area. And this area you can see on the map encompasses the area east from Shelford to the western flank of the Euyangs, to Inverleigh in the south and Meredith in the north. And this time around, it was identified that a targeted landscape approach is more likely to achieve measurable outcomes than a whole of bioregional scale approach. This targeted area was selected for opportunities to improve connectivity between the major natural asset areas of the Brisbane Ranges, Euyangs, Bannockburn Bushland Reserve and the Inverleigh Flora and Fauna Reserve. It also provides provision for refuge areas in the face of climate change. The effects of future subdivision pressures on remnant vegetation will be less than inside the area directly associated with the G21 Regional Growth Plan. This area has not received, it's not recently attracted significant past funding for ecosystem protection. And there was also a lot of enthusiasm from the local community, landcare groups and friends of groups. So our project has been divided into 3 sub-programs. We've got the Grassy Eucalypt Woodlands Stewardship Program, Cultural Burning and the Linear Reserves Program. So we'll start with the Grassy Eucalypt Woodlands Stewardship Program. And this program is designed to support private landholders to protect and enhance critically endangered grassy eucalypt woodlands. The program aims to provide an increase in connectivity, quality and extent of 500 hectares of medium to high quality grassy eucalypt woodlands. And we're going to, because the aim of the management practices supported through this program includes seasonal grazing management, which includes seasonal frequency and duration, biomass management, which is both grazing and burning, pest, plant and animal management. And then we're also aiming under this program to increase permanent protection under Trust for Nature covenants for over 60 hectares. So the gathering of local knowledge location of high quality remnant sites and baseline data is critical for the success of the program. So some local knowledge and baseline data was collected through the early engagement and infer workshops. We also was planning to run a number of community forums earlier in the year to announce the program, gauge interest from landholders and the broader community to participate in the stewardship program and other activities. However, due to COVID, that wasn't able to occur. So we have announced the program via a series of social media posts that have been shared by many community groups. We've also held individual meetings with key stakeholders and project partners. We are still planning to hold a number of community forums and extension events to promote the Grassy Eucalypt woodlands following the easing of the COVID restrictions. And all the information we are collecting is being collated into a spatial database that we'll continue to build on throughout the project to better understand the location, the type and the condition of grassy eucalypt woodlands within the project area and the surrounds. So the Grassy Eucalypt Woodlands Stewardship Program, as I mentioned, it's been announced on social media, but we've also developed a number of media releases. It's on our CMA webpage. And also landholders within the targeted area have been engaged directly through a targeted mail out. Funding rounds will be conducted through an expression of interest process, and that's open now. So we're inviting anyone with grassy eucalypt woodlands within the target area or the surrounding landscape to contact us to learn more about the program. Landholders who submit an EOI will be contacted by CMA extension staff. All sites within the target area will be assessed through an on-ground site visit. Sites outside the target area will be assessed if they're likely to be of particular high value and we've got sufficient resources. Site quality and importance, that's like connectivity, will also be assessed through an assessment metric based on benefits and costs. And then following this, sites will be assessed, ranked and recommended or not for funding. And then the program will be adapted depending on demand and experience in the first year. So there is a little bit of an eligibility criteria. Only private land will be considered. There will not be a minimum size threshold for site consideration on the basis that some very high quality sites can be found within small areas. Eligible sites will need to meet at least a moderate vegetation quality threshold. Priority will be given to sites within the target sub-region. And then in the case where previous plains tender agreements have been in place or financial incentives or payments have been previously received, the sites may only be eligible for funding if the landholder will enter into a trust for nature covenant. And this time around, we're using a fixed price offer approach of $1,000 per hectare for a 10-year voluntary agreement. So I previously mentioned that the CMA will be working with Trust for Nature to facilitate covenants through the program. And they'll be identified during the site assessment and the EOI process. Also part of this program, we've got a really strong monitoring component. So ARI are developing and implementing a long-term grassy eucalypt woodland monitoring program to detect the impact of on-ground intervention on the vegetation condition. The CMA extension officers also complete annual site compliance audits. Landholders complete 6-monthly progress reports. And we're fortunate that the Geelong Field Naturalists Club are really keen to do some fauna surveys, and that'll build on some of our previous fauna surveys that we've completed with the Geelong Field Nats, looking at the Dalmempa, and that's the striped legless lizard. The second component of our program is the cultural burning. So cultural burning is a burning practice developed by Aboriginal people to enhance the health of the land and its people. Cultural burning can include burning or prevention of burning of country for the health of particular plants and animals, threatened species and biodiversity in general. It may involve patch burning to create different fire intervals across the landscape, or it could be used for fuel and hazard reduction. Fire may be used to gain better access to country, to clean up important pathways, maintain cultural responsibilities, and as part of cultural heritage management. It's really important to acknowledge that cultural burning can only be performed by Aboriginal people. And a fire is really important to native grassland ecology. Without fire or some form of biomass removal, the native grasses generally, they grow too big and they lose the intertussock spaces and smother out that diverse array of colourful wildflowers that you find. So cultural burning is a really important tool for Aboriginal people for their social values, the way they manage country, but it's also really important for the ecological function of a grassland and grassy eucalypt woodlands. So through this project, we've got a cultural burning component that will be led by the CCMA in partnership with a number of other organisations. The primary objective of the Grassy Eucalypt Woodlands Cultural Burning Program is to improve our understanding of the use of cultural burning as a management tool in grassy eucalypt woodlands on their VVP, exchange knowledge with traditional owners and practitioners of Western views of woodland management, and it's also to support traditional owners to build capacity to be able to perform the cultural burning and also to be back on country. The key project partners include the Wadawurrung traditional owners, the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, Parks Vic, the CFA and a number of public and private land managers. So under the guidance of the Wadawurrung traditional owners, cultural burning will occur on 30 hectares of land. We're aiming to deliver about 10 hectares per year over the next 3 years. The cultural burning will occur on both grassy eucalypt woodlands and natural temperate grasslands. And as I mentioned, on both public and private land. And the impact of cultural burning on the extent and condition of grassy eucalypt woodlands and natural temperate grasslands will be evaluated through a monitoring and an evaluation process in consultation with the Wadawurrung traditional owners. And then the third program under our Protecting Victorian Volcanic Plains is the Linear Reserves Program. So this, some of our highest quality remnants of native grasslands occur in the narrow strips along roadsides, rail corridors and cemeteries. The Linear Reserves Program commenced in 2014 and aims to enhance the condition and resilience of native grasslands and associated flora and fauna species through weed control and prescribed burning on narrow strips of public land along roadsides and rail reserves. The Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning manage the Linear Reserves project with support from a wide range of agencies and stakeholders, including the CFA, catchment management authorities, local government authorities, Regional Roads Victoria, rail authorities and traditional owners. So the Linear Reserves program extends across the Corangamite CMA and the Glenelg Hopkins CMA region. And you may have noticed an article introducing the Linear Reserve in the recent Victorian Landcare magazine. So the aims of the Linear Reserves program is to increase the connectivity and quality of 850 hectares of no medium to high quality remnant grassy eucalypt woodlands and temperate grasslands. And this is achieved via ecological burning and weed control. So during spring and autumn, these amazing CFA volunteers generously volunteer their time to burn many of the roadsides across the district, with the main focus to reduce fuel loads. But fire, as I mentioned before, is also really critical in maintaining the diversity and health of native grasslands. And without some form of burning, whether that's ecological, cool burning or cultural burning, the condition of native grasslands deteriorating or lost. Many of the native grasslands along these linear reserves are threatened by introduced pasture species, predominantly phalaris. And a lot of these introduced pasture species don't like to be burnt, so fires are really critical management tool to managing their invasiveness. So generally following the burns by the CFA volunteers, NRM contractors are engaged to undertake targeted weed control on high threat species. And then there's a few other additional outcomes that we're hoping to achieve through this program. An increase in the knowledge, skills and awareness of grassy eucalypt woodland management. We're also aiming to increase the awareness and knowledge of cultural heritage with landowners through cultural heritage awareness site visits with the Wadawurrung traditional owners. And this builds on some really positive feedback we received through our previous Plains Tender programs, where we did on-site on-country visits, which are pretty much just a paddock walk and talk to learn more about the traditional values. We'll also have a number of extension opportunities, so workshops, forums and webinars. And I also just wanted to mention that this program is also supported by an incredibly experienced and knowledgeable steering committee as well. And that brings me to the end of the presentation. Did we have any questions?
Jess, there's a question in the chat box from Angie, just asking whether the linear reserve program is also limited to those program boundaries, or if there are high value areas on properties adjacent to the boundaries that would link waterways, would they be considered?
So the linear reserves program extends across the Corangamite CMA and the Glenelg Hopkins region as well. So it's not limited to the target sub-region for the Grassy Eucalypt Woodlands program. About 8 years ago, all the linear reserves were surveyed by some ecologists to identify where the high value areas were, and that's where generally they target a lot of their weed control, and liaise with a number of land managers to ensure that the ecological burning and then the weed control are done in coordination. Just more recently, we have been talking about trying to engage some of the adjacent landholders where we can see that the native vegetation does extend into private property, and try and build that in as another component of the program as well. Does that answer your question? Did anyone else have a question they'd like to ask?
Another one in the chat box.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I should have a look at that. This from Nigel that you're referring to?
Yes, that's the new one.
Yep.
Yeah, look, it's not so much a question per se, but just from my own experience, you know, and the land around me, I can see that there's some wonderful strips of land, but they're massively impacted by weeds, and there doesn't appear to be a strong interest from any one party to resolve. I think it's really, really complex is probably the problem. And I'm not in that special area that you note, but yeah, I could just see there's all sorts of challenges with, you know, roads cutting down old beautiful trees that probably house multiple species in them, and you know, weeds that are out of control, and you know, the remnant vegetation being, you know, appealing to native species that then get squashed on roads when they step out, etc. So I love the concept, but I'd love to at some point have the opportunity to understand the strategy in even more detail, and whether there's you know, other options as well. And I know you've got some really good programs along rivers and creeks and waterways generally, so that's obviously another area of interest. So it's not really a question. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's good. Good feedback for us to consider, especially when we do meet up with a number of the land managers and do the future works.
Could I add to that comment, Jess? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think it's a good point. It's awesome. That project sounds fantastic. And I think there's also scope to extend that into connectivity through farms as well. So webs of tree, biolinks, and how we can support farmers to do that. And also doing cultural burning practices on their properties with the biolinks.
Was there was there a particular question, or was that more of a...
No, I was just adding on to the last sort of comment, just as along a similar vein of connectivity through other areas besides roadways and verges. Yeah.
Yes. So I guess it might also be useful to elaborate a little bit more on the number of networks that work with the Victorian Volcanic Plains. So there are a few different, one of them is the Conservation Management Network, and we get together probably, I think it's once every 3 months, and it's a network of NRM practitioners, both through local government, CMAs, departments, CFA, roads, trust, pretty much any NRM practitioner within that space. And we do, discuss, I guess, all the projects that are happening within our own backyard, and then how we can find that similarities. Generally, as a CMA, we work a lot on land, so it's great to meet up with the public land practitioners and see where we can find those linkages to be able to support and enhance other programs as well. So I definitely agree with what you're saying, trying to connect it and not focus on your one little narrow patch as well.
Jess, I think John had a question.
Sure.
I did actually write something here, but I couldn't actually send it, so I don't know what's happened there. But I was just asking if it was possible for interested landowners near the GEW area that you're talking about to be involved, mainly to link some of these areas with other groups on the edge valued sites, whether it be a linkage of a road system or properties that are already involved around that Meredith kind of Geelong Shelford area. Would it be possible, or is that something that you're excluding at this stage?
So the boundaries for the targeted area aren't, I guess, hard boundaries. We're calling them soft boundaries. We're focusing within the target area, but any high quality sites outside of the target area, we would be really interested in learning more about and being invited to come out and meet with the landowners. When we do our assessment, we do look for connectivity, and whether that is through other private land or public land, the linear reserves as well, because that's so widely acknowledged that connectivity is so important for that, the gene flows, for resilience to climate change, to other disturbance factors as well. I'd like to stress those target boundaries are soft boundaries. We are focusing our energy and engaging people within that area, but also inviting people outside of that area.
As an extension to that question, is actually is it going to be a proactive situation where the CCMA are actually going to speak to landowners who they see valuable grasslands on their property, which maybe they may not know that they've got those valuable grasslands, Is it going to be a case of being proactive and asking those people if they'd like to be involved, or is it going to be a case of people have to more or less know what's going on to actually become involved? You know what I mean? It's kind of the people that are interested would be the ones that become involved. But people that might not know about good grasslands maybe need to be spoken to, you know, as a proactive involvement, to get people involved by actually approaching them, even if they might not know they've got valuable grasslands.
Yeah. So firstly, just wanted to, I guess, identify that this program is targeting on the grassy eucalypt woodlands. So through the infer process and our planning, it was identified that not a lot of investment had been put into the grassy eucalypt woodlands component, and not a lot of, I guess, project buy-in from our previous plains tenders. So there is a shift to the grassy eucalypt woodlands, and we engaged with landholders within the target area via, like you mentioned, those social media channels, but we also sent them a direct letter addressed to each landholder within the target area, inviting them to learn more about the program, to contact us so we could come out and meet with them on site. We have had some fantastic response from that. There only has been a small percentage that have actually got grassy eucalypt woodlands on their property. However, it's provided a fantastic extension opportunity just for them to contact the CMA and to learn who we are, us to learn about what natural assets they have on their property. And majority of the landholders that have got back into contact with us have said they don't have grassy eucalypt woodlands, but they've got these grasslands instead that they'd like to learn more about. And although at this stage of the program we can't include them within our program, we are still going to make some time this spring and summer to go out and meet with them and to do a paddock walk and identify some of those key assets. There is an opportunity in the program, if we don't receive enough interest for the grassy eucalypt woodlands, that we can adapt the focus and also include other critically endangered ecosystems like the natural temperate grasslands, and also extend outside of that target area as well. So we're still encouraging all engagement and trying to get out and visit all remnant areas that we can. But I guess for this particular funding at the moment, the core focus is the grassy woodlands.
Thank you, Jess.
No worries.
Jess, I think it's important to say that this round of funding is going to this area, but in fact there's been a number of other rounds of funding which have gone to other areas. So the priority areas will change, and I think CMA is very good at lobbying government to get some more money to do this program, because both parties think it's well worthwhile. So I think, yes, everybody should put in their expression of interest, and I don't think it's too hard to do that. It's not a very tedious process, but I think it's a great thing so that we as the CMA know exactly where people are and whether or not, if they're very keen on saving their native vegetation, because it's really, really important.
Thanks, Alice. Yeah, that's absolutely right. The focus does shift slightly with each funding round, whether that's the type of vegetation that we're focusing on protecting, or even the landscape area as well. But we always encourage as many people to contact us to learn more about the grasslands, but also give us an opportunity to also know where other areas are that are worth investing in. So when we are doing our future program proposals and funding bids as well, we have these great stories behind us to demonstrate why we need funding and where that can go and be really effective on the ground.
Right, we're way over time. If I think if anybody's got any, were we half an hour today?
Yeah, we are, Alice. So
if anybody's got any other comments, they certainly may like to speak with Jess. I'm sure she'll be happy to take a call, or certainly email or whatever. But I do like to keep to time, because otherwise people might say, I'm not going to come next week because you were away over time and I haven't got time. So I think it's probably an ideal time to stop now. Thank you all for participating and learning from Jess, because it's such a great program, and just the photos are just so gorgeous. And I've been out spotting orchids and things in the last week or so up here, and I'm just quite passionate about it all. I think it's so wonderful to think that we've still got the native veg that we have. So well done, everybody, and we'll certainly look forward to seeing you next week.